Hi, Victoria.
Hi.
Welcome to our Happy Healthy You My Story podcast. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this and share another story to help other women out there.
Yeah, it's so motivational. And the couple of stories we've done already, we've had so many comments from ladies and actually teenagers saying it was so helpful. They're just getting started with their hormonal journey. So hopefully we can, because you're a little bit younger than both of our other podcasts. So it's going to be great to hear your story of how it all started. And just for the ladies listening, a little bit of background, Victoria is from Texas. So it's great to have one of our international ladies. And you're 29 years old, is that right?
Yes, I will be 30 in October.
Okay, all right, fabulous. So we've chatted already, and you mentioned that you've just got a 2.5-year-old little boy. And
yes, he's a little bit over, he's 3 months over 2.5 now. He'll be 3 at the end of June.
So what a lot of women don't realize is pregnancy is a really big stress on the body, and it can just completely derail your hormones. And we all hear about postnatal depression, but the aspect of your hormones coming back into balance is rarely discussed. So just tell us a little bit about what happened for you around that time.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't really realize it at the time, but before I had my son, my hormones were already starting to have some trouble. But after I had him, it was very clear that I was in trouble. I had postpartum depression, anxiety. My nervous system was just all over the place. Anything set me off. I was easily startled. I was having thyroid problems. I breastfed my son for 1.5 years. And I would have liked to continue on longer, but I think some of the hormonal stuff going on kind of played a part to that. But I went from being in hyperthyroid state to hypothyroid state, hypothyroid for 1 to 3 months at a time each time. And I didn't know what was going on with me. Here in my area, there's no such thing as naturopath. Not really any holistically minded practitioners either. So I was really on my own. I could have gone to a bigger city, but being in postpartum, you just really don't have that time to be making trips like that. So I was lost until I found Happy Healthy You. So
okay. Tell me a little bit about how long it was. Obviously you had your son. Was it before you started to feel down? Was it instant, or did it take a little bit of time to kick in?
It was definitely instant because I had kind of a rough start. I had not any serious complications during the birth, but I did get induced. It was 46 hours, hour of pushing, and then I had kind of a complication afterwards. The doctor tried to pull my placenta out, just kind of rushing things along, and the umbilical cord snapped. So she had to go in and scoop, manually with her hand, scoop it out while I had retained placental matter. So a week postpartum, I was in the ER a couple of times within that first week, and they had scheduled me, because I was having clots, very large clots pass. And so I had to have a procedure to get the rest removed a week postpartum. I wanted to do natural birth, but I ended up getting an epidural. The recovery for me was just really hard, and my son had colic. So the sleep deprivation, constant crying, screaming, physically, I could barely, I was in so much pain for quite a while, like probably at least a month before I started feeling a little bit better. So all of those factors and everything else, the hormonal ups and downs, I just was a mess from the start. And then, when that stuff started to settle down, my emotions were still all over the place, and it's so hard to tell whether it's normal or not, especially, it's your first time. And they do like a light screening at your postpartum checkup, but they didn't really offer me any support, even though my answers were kind of a flag to them. Nobody really said anything. So it was another thing that I had to kind of figure out on my own.
Yeah. And I suppose you probably had to have, did you have antibiotics after the procedure as well?
I did, yes. And that caused another problem. I had just full body thrush starting. I had it on my nipples. I had it in my mouth. And then whenever my thyroid problems started, and I went to a practitioner here who is more naturally minded than most in my area, I had a full-on Candida infection in my whole body.
Yeah, just on top of everything else. And it sort of all starts with that 46 hours in labor. It's worse than running a marathon. It's probably running 5 marathons that you've never trained for. Okay, so
yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, so that stresses your body. Then you've got everything that's happening in the first few weeks, which for any mother and father of newborns is always going to be a stressful time. But obviously the pain you're in, it just compounds, and stress is the number one disruptor of hormones. So, and the second biggest disruptor is poor sleep. So you've got it all happening there. And it's, when you think about it, every single new mother is just faced with this situation. It's extremely taxing on their bodies. So, and that's why so many women have lots and lots of problems. So, okay, so we're in about, so you managed to start breastfeeding, obviously, which is great. But you're getting thrush on your nipples. Tell me how that made you feel and how you managed that.
Oh gosh, that was probably one of the worst things of it all, because I went to the lactation consultants at my hospital. They were available, and they just were brushing off my pain as like normal, brand new nursing pain. They just didn't consider that. And I was also having these like shooting pains in my breasts too. And everything was just played down to, well, it's normal, your first time, and it's a little bit painful at first. And I just couldn't figure out why it was so painful, but I didn't receive any help with that. So I ended up having to use, I forget the name of what it's called, but it's like a little plastic covering that goes over. I did that for a month, and luckily was able to just smoothly transition without it. My son took to it, but I was in so much pain for so long. And then once I did finally figure out it was thrush, I mentioned it to the doctors, and I think the only reason they listened to me is because my son developed it in his mouth, and you could see it in his mouth. And by then they're like, oh yeah, he has it in his mouth, you probably have it, whatever. So after that, I finally got some help, but it kept coming back, and it was just a nightmare because it's painful. And obviously with the antibiotics, my doctor didn't mention probiotics or anything like that. I was like barely in my journey into all of this, new knowledge. So I had like tried a probiotic once or twice before, but I never really found a good one or had education on knowing how to find a good one. So I know that my gut was just wrecked, and everything was just a mess.
And did anyone at any part in that journey mention that maybe the antibiotics are the trigger for the colic in your son?
No, not at all. And I honestly haven't even thought about that till now, till you said that.
And because what happens is the benefits of breastfeeding, apart from the nutrition, is all those wonderful bacteria that you're giving your son. And there's lots and lots of studies linking the benefits of breastfeeding and how it builds up your microbiome, which is all those healthy bacteria in your gut. So and he's got the thrush, so 100% that's what it would have been happening.
Oh man. And it's so hard to hear that, because it's like, if somebody could have just, or if I knew this before, it's like, it would have made such a difference, because it made things so hard on all of us.
Yeah. And it is such a simple thing. And in this day and age, it's not an uncommon thing to happen, first of all. And the doctors, they know that this is a very, very common side effect, and more than likely there'll be colic and thrush and everything else that comes on. So It's
Right.
put you onto a good probiotic and you could have avoided a lot of those things. But that's what health's about. It's a journey and we're learning. And this is why we're doing this podcast as well. Hopefully maybe there's another pregnant mother out there that has the same experience and can avoid all that pain and trouble that you went through, because the colic is not just like you're going through all that pain, but anyone that knows a colicky baby, it just, the poor baby's not feeling great and they're not sleeping well, and that just throws a whole additional stress on top of what you don't already need.
Everyone's just in stress. It's like baby's having trouble, we're having trouble, no one knows what to do. If this can help somebody else, I would be so happy.
All right, so let's go into so all this was happening, but then after about a month, then the anxiety and the hormonal changes started to kick in for you. Yeah,
and I would say the anxiety and stuff was there from the get-go, but it was easier to see like, okay, this is something sticking around since my body was finally starting to heal a little bit. Then this, those symptoms were still there.
Yeah, and it's the process of labor and being pregnant is just a complete shift. The hormones that the body's an amazing thing, obviously, to create the child in the first place and then for the delivery. But you're going from 150% down to trying to re-regulate your cycle, and then you've obviously got all the hormones associated with breastfeeding as well. So it's a huge upheaval that's rarely spoken about. And anxiety is one of the most common, if not the most common cause of anxiety, is hormonal changes and shifts. And often a lot of women will, like your situation is a bit different, but they'll go to a doctor and get tested for their hormones to see if that's linked to the anxiety. But the hormone show is normal because the levels are normal, but it's the fluctuations that trigger the anxiety. And postpartum, you've got hormones going all over the place. So, and plus the stress as well. Stress, you've got this double-edged sword that's kind of causing both of the situations to occur. So, okay, and then the anxiety, but then you mentioned your hormones are going crazy. What else are you feeling in yourself? Are you teary, depression?
I think mostly for me, the anxiety kind of manifested as rage. I just was finding myself getting so angry over everything, pretty much. I had more depressive symptoms in the beginning, like kind of like mourning my old life and just the isolation. Really, I was really isolated. It was my son was born the end of June in 2019, so it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. Things really ramped up here at the beginning of 2020 for us. But even without the COVID stuff, I just didn't have a lot of support. None of my other friends are really parents. I don't have older siblings. I was just alone. So just kind of transitioning into that as well. My depressive symptoms were manifesting that way. But then those kind of started to ease up, especially as my son got older, and we were able to kind of do a little more with him. But it was more the anxiety and the rage. Like especially with my poor husband, I was just so angry, and it took me a while to even realize like something's wrong, because I just thought, well, I'm stressed out and I'm a new mom and I'm home all the time. Like it wasn't really registering me, like while being in the thick of it, that this is like this is not normal. This is a problem. So, that was mainly.
And you're certainly not alone in that. It can take years and years for women to understand that how they're feeling is linked to their hormones, and hormones are incredibly powerful messengers and influences of your mood. And that rage, as you're talking about, it's not normal as a normal sort of reaction, but when you're in that phase, you just don't see that. And I'm interested to hear what your husband, how he managed that, and now when you look back, how he reflects on that time?
Honestly, I think he was so just overwhelmed with all the newness too. I guess I've never really asked him like, what did you think about that? Because it was just so overwhelming for both of us. And I think maybe in his mind, I'm sure he was like, oh gosh, this is not my wife. Like, this is not normal. But I think part of him too was like, well, is this how it is for new moms? Like, that just people, there's not enough conversation around these feelings, especially just being so open with them. And I think particular, like, there's a lot about postpartum depression, but when we talk about rage, like, that's not something a lot of women want to share, because I feel like there's just so much more shame around like anxiety rage than depression, because you're like, you're flying off the handle, you're angry, you're acting like, you're throwing tantrums kind of. And so that's it's a hard one. I'm gonna have to ask him after this and see what he thinks. I guess we've just never had that conversation really, but he knows now, like, oh gosh, that's just, that's not normal.
And no one tells you about these things right before.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's talking about it's going to be wonderful, it's going to be, and I've had 2 sons, and those first 3 months are just the most traumatic. No one tells you how stressful it is, and the lack of sleep, and no one talks about that stress and lack of sleep, how it impacts on your well-being in terms of your health, in terms of your relationships. And the poor guys are often sitting there going, what the hell's going on? So it's important that anyone listening here is to have those open channels of communication. And because men see it a lot more acutely than you will, because you're in this kind of cloud of what's going on. So and it can be very difficult for them to broach the subject. But at least if that seed is set that, hey, this is not you, this is, and this is the other thing important to mention, is this is not a psychological situation. So when we talk about anxiety and depression, we often think this is a psychological, so it's all in the mind situation, but this is a physical effect within your body, your hormones changing, that's causing you to feel this way. So, and that's where the stigma comes around, as you said, with anxiety and depression. There's this societal, it's a taboo subject, but it's really a physical thing that's happening in your body. And that's what we want to try and let people say. Then they can take steps to try and balance their hormones faster and hopefully avoid this, because it's not just often a couple of months. This can go on for years. And then if you don't treat it properly, you then end up on different hormones and antidepressants and anxiolytics. And, you're going down a really different path to what if you manage your hormones naturally.
Right. And I've kind of experienced all of that. I mean, you already know, with my family's history of early menopause and my symptoms I was having several months ago. And I do a lot of therapy too. And I always tell my therapist, like, it feels like like a battle that I just can't win whenever it's something hormonal, because just like you said, I can have all of the preparation mentally for, certain situations and how I'm thinking, but when it's hormonal, it's physical, and it's just, it's like all that just goes out the window. It feels so impossible.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look at that, because that's going to be really interesting. And we haven't chatted a lot about that prior, how this kind of puts you in this situation. So I know you mentioned that you have the Mthfr gene, which is, for those women that don't understand, there's a gene that it's actually very common. 50% of people have this gene, which it causes your body to not metabolize hormones very well. And it can also cause you to not metabolize and digest B vitamins as well. So it's a genetic predisposition, and it can manifest in different ways and different levels in different women. So when did you get that diagnosed?
So I actually got that diagnosed through my psychiatrist. I saw a new psychiatrist about, I guess it's been like 6 or 7 months ago, maybe a little more. They did a test, because back when I was in the beginning of college, I had depression that hit me pretty hard. Couldn't figure out what was going on. My campus doctor prescribed me SSRIs, just all these different kinds, over the course of 2 years. I was probably on 7 different kinds and nothing was working for me. So with my new doctor, they have this test called GeneSight, and it gives you kind of a look at how your body will react to certain medications.
Mm-hmm.
And they also test for the MTHFR. So I found that out then.
Okay.
I also got an ADHD diagnosis then as well, which kind of changes things too. But yeah, I barely found out, and it's like such a vital piece of information to have with all of this. So I finally know now and can take the steps necessary to help myself.
And you mentioned in your family it runs the early menopause. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Right. So my family's not very open with stuff. So I know bits and pieces here and there, but I've kind of been opening the conversations with, some of my aunts more, and especially since I'm getting towards the age where they had their, their problems. I found out and this is on my mom's side, my grandmother was in menopause by 35. One of my other aunts was, I think, 34. I had a cousin who's 32 at the time she's menopausal, and probably several more. I just don't know their specific ages. But you look at the women in my family, and my mom has 3 sisters, and we have a whole lot of women on that side of the family. Everyone has so many hormonal issues.
Yeah. Well, it's very, very common. And the other unfortunately very common thing is women, even in families, are not talking about these things. So again, this is what we're trying to do, is popularize women to talk about it, because let's face it, half the population are women and no one's talking about hormonal imbalances. And it's one of the reasons why you had to go through all that and self-discover it all. And it shouldn't have to be that way. So we need to have these conversations. So thanks again for chatting with us about that. So, but it's interesting. I'd love to hear more. You mentioned the depression when you were in college. Take me right back to when you first started to get your menstrual cycle and how your body changed, because more than likely you will have had issues ever since then.
Yes. So I started my period at 13. In the beginning, I guess I would say like that first year or so, it was fairly light, regular flow, but probably around 14, 15, things started ramping up. I started getting a super heavy flow, lots of clots. It was always really irregular. I did have a lot of PMS symptoms. I had a lot of pain. The pain was sporadic for me. There were times when it wasn't so bad, but then times I had to leave school, or I have this one memory where I played volleyball, I played club all through high school and middle school. And we were right at the end of a match, and I had these horrible cramps come on. I missed the serve, and after the game, we were supposed to meet with the coach. I bolted with my mom and got painkillers and a heating pad. Like, the pain was so bad, but that was always up and down. As the years went through, my PMS kind of got worse. And then the pain started getting worse when I got older, to where I had to take painkillers like on a clock. If I missed my dose, like, I would just be in too much pain. So that stayed like that.
At any point, did you must have gone and seen a doctor at that point? Did anyone mention or test for endometriosis or polycystic ovarian? Nothing.
No. No, I actually barely got my gynecologist to listen to me about that and kind of check for it. And even then, it was kind of like pulling teeth. And I'm 29 now, so that definitely wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, but when you say back then, it's only 15 years ago. It's not,
Yeah.
in terms of these conditions have been around for a long time. And, you know, I keep harping on about this, but it's only because I'm so passionate, is, you know, there's this epidemic of hormonal imbalances in women, and every single day, right now, there's a young girl and a mother sitting in a doctor's surgery looking for answers and not getting them. And, you know, from such a young age for you having these issues, there has to be a better way to educate women that there are options and how to deal with it. And particularly in your situation, the heavy periods is a classic sign that you're not metabolizing those hormones well. So what happens is your body produces hormones, and if your liver and digestive system don't break those hormones down, your body reabsorbs them. So instead of just getting a single dose of that particular hormone that's released in the body, you can get 2, 3, 5 times impact, and that causes a lot of the tissue overgrowth, it causes the pain, causes the heavy periods, and then disrupts your emotional well-being as well. And that's when the mood swings come in, the depression and anxiety. And I'm almost certain that when you were in college, there was no mention of, is this a hormonal depression or is this just a typical? So, and there's very, very little discussion around hormones and depression and anxiety, but they're the leading triggers of it. So,
right.
Yeah.
What about kind of figure that out? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go on. You figured it out for yourself, did you?
Yeah, I did. Because, you know, things got worse, and I kind of, on my, you know, my journey learning all of, you know, how to take care of my body, I grew up the way I was, like my body type. I was skinny, size 00, didn't break 100 pounds till I was probably 20.
Yeah.
I was really active, and I had a super fast metabolism. And the thing was, I never got taught how to eat. I never got taught about nutrition. My mom really didn't cook a lot. They did sometimes. I pretty much survived on takeout, frozen foods, forever. And then, you know, people kind of, I don't think they mean to, but they kind of like, especially when you're younger, like, oh, you can eat whatever you want. Like, that's awesome. And you're like, yeah, it is awesome. And, you know, I just never knew how to take care of myself. And that kind of played into when the depression hit. And then, you know, you add in a bunch of other factors. I came to college. I drank a lot in the beginning. I was drinking a lot. I just destroyed my health, you know, based off of those. Like, looking back now, I'm like, well, no wonder this happened. So then I started gaining weight. Then the depression came. And like you said, nobody even mentioned hormonal stuff. But after the 2 years of trying SSRIs, I went to this place in town. It's targeted at weight loss, but they do hormone testing and stuff. They did a saliva test to really see. That was my first really big insight into, oh, hormones affect your body. My result, you know, I mean, like, it's so simple. It sounds so simple, but it's just not something that you're told or taught or something that's explored. But whenever I went, I remember my results. I wasn't producing any cortisol anymore until like later at night. And I do have, like, I've always been a night owl, but I was really struggling with my sleep then. Progesterone super low. And those were really the two main things, but it wasn't like as in-depth as what I've learned from you guys, but it was my first step into learning about my hormonal journey and how it was affecting my body. And so that was like when my hormones really started messing up, and I think that was about 7 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, well, interesting. The cortisol being low until later in the day, that's a sign of adrenal fatigue. So your adrenal connected. The whole endocrine system is interconnected. So when you come to college, you're stressed, you're not eating well, you're partying, the adrenals take a big hit, and that's all part of it as well. And then, interesting enough, your adrenals and thyroid are very closely connected as well. So, you know, you've got this kind of slow building momentum of your endocrine system slowly going out of balance. And then the big stress on your body is the pregnancy. And it's obviously, we probably could have predicted that you might have had problems if we chatted before the pregnancy and it helped you then. But again, it's so interesting that there's just that lack of information about hormones, but also you hit the nail on the head in terms of diet and lifestyle. It's just so important. You've learned that from the things that we talk about, but as a society, I think that's just not discussed at all. And, you know, as soon as we mention that maybe you reduce your coffee, reduce alcohol, reduce sugar, it's people like, oh, really? You know, why do I have to give up all the things that I like? But these are the things that are really at the fundamental element of why the hormones became imbalanced in the first place, because they disrupt your hormone metabolism, they disrupt your endocrine system. So, you know, there's just a big gap of knowledge. And again, that's what we're here for, to try and teach people how to manage their hormones properly. So, okay. So
I've learned so much from y'all.
Well, it's good. And if we can just help one person, then we're happy. Hopefully we're helping hundreds of thousands now, but it's nice to hear. And it really is that journey, and it's life anyways. It's an education, and the more you can teach yourself, and more is saying it's so important that you take responsibility for your own health and educate yourself, because at the end of the day, doctors are busy, naturopaths can be expensive, and you need to understand what's going, because we only have one body, and that impacts on our health and happiness to the day we die. So well done you're on that journey. So that's great.
Yes, in the middle of it.
Yeah. So I know you followed our reset program now and mentioned that was a big psychological shift and physical shift. Tell me a bit about your experience with that.
Right. So I could start by saying that first place I went to was like my first insight into healthy eating ever. So that was about 7 years ago. And it wasn't really into like the types of food you're eating and what they do for you. It was more of, eat vegetables and whatever. But that was like where I started. And then I've just kind of slowly grown until reaching you guys. And then, food is just something I've always struggled with. I get really, really bad cravings. The area I live in is not very healthy. The foods here are, it's hard to even like go out and find something more healthy. But I was kind of putting off the 4-week reset because I was just like mentally preparing for it and everything. That is until my symptoms ramped up. I guarantee you every perimenopause symptom in the book about 6 months ago. And some of them I kind of just didn't notice at first. And then I was like, oh, this has been going on for a while. And then other ones were just in my face, like, this is really bad. I was having like really bad joint pain. It got to a point where I was having insomnia again. And it was so bad. There were nights I didn't even sleep for 5 minutes. It was crazy. And then the mood swings I was experiencing were probably almost worse than early postpartum for me. Like, things were getting really, really bad. And that's because I've been taking the Happy Healthy supplements and kind of, following along, trying to get close to an 80-20 lifestyle, but usually failing and having to restart. So anyways, those symptoms really pushed me into, okay, like you're slacking. Let's get into this and let's do it. So I think we did it. My husband and I did it together, I think in February. And it was definitely challenging, but it was so different than any other thing that I have done as far as like healthy eating, because I did that one program and I did this other program that was kind of like a pyramid scheme, but they had like an eating plan and their supplements, which, that helped me. But I have a lot of trouble with just my mindset and my relationship with food. And I really liked how flexible the 4-week reset program was with Substituting, like, for me, I'm not a salad person. I don't like dressings, and I struggle because it's just like so taxing for me to chew and chew and chew. So, I replaced that with like bone broths and other stuff. So it was exciting to me to like be able to have that flexibility and those options. And it was really neat to learn like the different, I went out of my comfort zone and tried all these different foods that I never really have had before. And it was a really cool experience. We got really good results from it, and kind of for the first time, it just didn't really feel like, oh, I have to diet. And I've kind of been taking a dive into intuitive eating as well. So I was really, listening to my body on fullness. And I usually struggle in these things, and I did struggle a couple of times, especially I think in week 2, but it was not a struggle like I have had before. And I came into this for the first time, probably not just saying, oh, I want to lose weight. Like, I came into this knowing this is going to help my hormones, this is going to help my body. And the fear of going into perimenopause at 29, I wanted at least one more kid. It was scary because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have another kid. And, am I going to have to, go these other routes? So I was like, you know what? And I actually did talk to my gynecologist about it, and she brushed me off really hard about it just being so unlikely that that is what's happening to me at 29. She's like, I don't think that. And then she wanted to put me on birth control. And I was like, oh no, because I've tried like 3 different forms of birth control throughout my, adult life, and they've always made me extremely crazy, and I can't do them. So I've never stuck to that. And then knowing what I know now, and this was pretty recently, I was like, I'm not going to get on birth control for that. That's no. So I was like, I'm going to do this reset program, just see what happens. And we're going to start trying to have a baby. So we felt great at the end of it. This is so crazy. My husband lost 25 pounds.
Wow.
In the 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And I lost 10. But I'm just like, how did you lose 25 pounds? That's a lot. But yeah, we felt great. It taught us a lot of new things. We picked up a lot of new recipes and everything. And right in the middle of it was our first cycle of trying to conceive for our second child. And I ended up pregnant. So I'm pregnant right now.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. And I honestly, I can't obviously say this for sure, but I attribute my pregnancy to the reset and everything, because I think it would have been a lot more of a struggle. I did not expect it to happen the first time, but it did. And here I am. So I'm in week 8 right now, and I get my first scan next week to make sure everything's okay. But I don't think I would have been able to do it without kind of doing this reset and learning all this stuff on the way.
Well, yeah, that's amazing. And that another Happy Hormones baby, we've got thousands of them now. And the reset program and our 8-week program, and we've got a 7-day program as well, those dietary changes make a huge difference. And one of the things we recommend is anyone wanting to have a baby is to follow either the reset or the 8-week program as a preconception program. And it just, the body just kind of opens up and becomes receptive because you're giving it all that the right nutrition. And it's not a diet, as you said, it's just a healthy eating program. And yes, a good side effect is you lose weight, and probably your husband, probably a third of that weight would have been fluid, because most people hold a lot of fluid when you're not eating well. So that's the first thing that goes. And then the fat disappears as well. Wow, that's amazing. So the one thing I'd just say though, and with your history, is potentially you should be looking at maybe taking some progesterone now as well, just for the first 3 months, well, you're 2 months through now, because that can just be a big preventative of any sort of miscarriage. Not that it's going to happen, but it's just a really simple and easy. So go and see your GP and just maybe have a little chat about that, and we can talk offline about that as well. So okay, that's amazing. So what we've got to do now is make sure that we get your body into the perfect state, so that for the next delivery and post, that we can avoid a lot of that stuff from the first child. So I can help you with that. So, yeah. Okay.
That would be great.
Wonderful. Yeah. But it is that journey, and it's when people think, particularly if you've had that upbringing where you're just eating takeout food and frozen food, your taste buds change first of all. Any salads and different healthy food becomes very foreign. So doing programs like the Reset and 8-week program can expose you to that. And we've got all those recipes, hundreds of recipes on the website that you can kind of dig into and explore. And so that's one part. The other thing is, you mentioned cravings, and this is the big thing with sugar, obviously, and processed food is the body. The sugar upsets your endocrine balance, and you get these blood sugar levels sort of going like this all the time. So when your blood sugar levels drop, that's when you start craving these foods, and then you have those a quick hit of something, then your sugar levels go up. And then interestingly, your blood sugar levels are really closely linked with hormones as well. So this up and down all the time then disrupts your hormonal production and balance as well. So the body is one being, and when you've got one system out of whack, you can't expect the other system not to follow with that. So, and that can be the most difficult thing when getting started. Is you start out with great intentions, but these cravings are, can be likened to heroin. The withdrawals of some of these things, and the headaches and the stuff that can happen is amazing. Just coffee, for example, cutting that up, people don't realize, and they end up with these horrible headaches, and they think often it's the food, but it's not the food, it's the cutting out these sort of substances. So, but it's if you think about it and you just take it in small bits each time, and even if you implement one thing a week, and then if you continue with that and another, and if you slip up, then that's fine. There's no, it's all about that sum total at the end of the month, the end of the 3 months, the end of 6 months and a year, that has the really important thing. So how are you feeling now? Are you getting any morning sickness or?
I am. First time around, I had a pretty easy pregnancy. I was very, very, very tired. And I had some mild nausea from like week 8 to week 10, but this time I've had nausea since before week 4. And then it's kind of been ramping up like each week. So it's all new to me. I also didn't have food aversions last time, but I'm having that this time. So I've been really struggling. The things that I'm wanting are takeout and frozen food. And the things I'm having aversions to are the things I was previously eating. So I'm definitely struggling as far as food right now. I think cravings are kind of like one of my worst symptoms. Last pregnancy, they were out of control last time, and I can see why, and like how that attributed to my state afterwards, because I was just eating, like I had a huge appetite with my son. I was eating, just giving into these cravings, and I was eating extra, like I was so hungry all the time. So I'm trying to do better this time around, and I'm still struggling for sure.
There's lots of things you can do, and we can chat about it offline as well. But something that I've found just with my patients is yoga can be a fabulous thing to help reduce the stress, but just the keeping your body nimble and exercising every day. Exercise is a really, really important thing as well. And that can just keep because a lot of, as I said, these cravings, it's a biological craving. Your body is doing it for a reason. So exercise is really important. Yoga, increasing the amount of healthy fats can really stop a lot of those blood sugar spikes as well. So you can get them just through like just even having a nut and seed mix that you just snack on through the day. That just stops those blood sugar levels dropping. And yeah, trying to stay away. Anything that's overly processed will have an impact on, it'll in time cause cravings. So trying to do as much food prep yourself, and particularly if you can't, buy a lot of healthy food where you are. But it's a really vicious cycle because you don't feel great. And I understand exactly where you're at. And something I'd say is try not to, because you've been eating well, and then there's times when you're craving and not eating well, don't get down on yourself about that, because that becomes a vicious cycle in itself. So understand that this is happening, just try your best. And it's really important that you just kind of just stay as focused as you can, but just don't really feel bad that if you slip up, well, then that's done. And then, okay, how are we going to focus on the next meal, and take it a meal at a time and implement little things. Like I said, the nuts and seeds can just keep your blood sugar levels balanced, and hopefully you'll have a better run with it, because nutrition at the end of the day is so important in pregnancy. And we can have a look at, are you taking any pregnancy supplements?
Yes, I have a all-around prenatal multi. I've got my fish oils. I'm also taking a lot of B6 right now to try to help with the nausea, and several other things that I'm taking. Can't remember right now.
Ginger's been proven to be very good for
ginger. I'm taking ginger. I have all these different kinds of ginger things. I have a ginger tonic that I can add to my drinks. It's just ginger. And then I've got like a ginger turmeric liquid thing that I'm taking, and I have ginger lozenges. So I'm definitely using my ginger right now.
Well, fingers crossed. It usually, they sort of say, start to subside after 3 months. So you've just got another month or so to go, and then hopefully you can get through this phase.
I'm hoping so. And I'm thankful I'm not, sick to where I'm throwing up or anything, but it's just been hard as far as like every day's kind of been different, to where I'm having aversions to these things, and then I won't have an appetite one day at all, and then other times I'm like really hungry. So it's definitely just different this time around. And I've come a long way in my journey of giving myself grace when I do eat something not so great. So that's a lot easier this time around. I was in that vicious cycle you're talking about the first time, because it was like, oh, I can't stop eating so bad, so I'd be hard on myself, and then that just made it worse. So I've definitely been easier on myself this time around. So it's a lot more manageable when you do give yourself grace.
The other thing that we might look at as well, we have our online clinic too. So maybe one of our women's health specialists can just help tweak that journey for you, because a lot of what we do is not really set up for pregnancy as well. So it's so we might need to give you a little bit more support there, just to make sure that everything goes. But it's been really interesting listening to you. I've heard similar stories thousands of times over the years. I've been doing this for 25 plus years. But and I understand the place you're at and the journey that you're on, but just feel positive that it is a journey, and you're improving and you're learning, and it is something that, and I say this to all women, it's something you're going to have to deal with your hormones your whole life. And for you having that genetic susceptibility, then it's always going to be there. So it's so important that you do learn that. So, but obviously the more you learn, the more you can learn how to make those intelligent choices. And you just mentioned before about the contraceptive pill just makes you worse. That's a classic sign with the Mthfr gene and that poor hormone metabolism. So, yeah. Okay. So it's just been an absolute pleasure, Victoria, and great to hear your story. And maybe what we do is we can chat again in a year's time after this has all been said and done, because there's just so many women going through exactly the same thing as you and have got no idea what to do. So just the simple fact of seeing your story and seeing, oh, hey, it's not just me, and they can take something out of that, and confidence. And I loved how the changes that you had out of the reset program, and that was just 4 weeks, right? So imagine if you implement that as your daily wellness lifestyle, as we like to call it. That's really is the secret. Our supplements are just catalysts to try and help you balance at different points in life, but really it always comes down to diet and lifestyle at the end of the day. And genes are expressed based on your internal health, and the predominant factor, changing that is your diet and lifestyle, and then managing stress levels. So
Right.
but I'm really happy you're on that journey, and we can support you in whatever little ways that we can.
Me too. I'm looking forward to hopefully having just a better experience all around this time and continuing, this journey into postpartum. And because I know it's going to be a long road ahead still, but I'm just thankful for you guys and the knowledge that you share in the community. Helps me not feel so alone. So I'm just really grateful for y'all.
Thank you. And we'll chat in a year's time. But we'll chat offline, because we'll certainly hold your hand for the rest of this as well. So
I would love that.
Thanks for your time, Victoria.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.